My name is Brenda Collins, and I am the chair of the Shambhala's Community Relations Committee. And just want to give you a 2-second blurb about us. Our mission is to foster liberation, personal and interpersonal healing, social action, and inclusive community building. So now I'm going to turn this over to my partner in crime, Maxine Hess, who is a member of the Women's Caucus for Art of Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. So as Brenda said, I'm with the Women's Caucus of Art for Georgia, and we have within that a subset called Art and Activism. The human trafficking topic became important to our organization probably about 4 or so years ago, when we had our first exhibit at Two Rules Gallery in Marietta. And then a couple of years ago, we had another exhibit at Mammal Gallery here in Atlanta. And this is our third exhibit here at Shambhala Center. And we've been partnering with the Shambhala Center for now over a year, probably almost 2 years. Having a group show to start with, and then I had a wonderful solo show here, and now we have our human trafficking exhibit and the panel, and we'll continue our partnership. It's just been a great, wonderful experience. The space is beautiful, and the people are wonderful. So thank you to Brenda and to Dan Phillips, who is the executive director, who is not here today, and you. And thank you all for being here on this lovely weather. And particularly thank you to our panel, who I'll introduce and then turn it over to Shondina. So Shondina Cruz-Morris is a judge with DeKalb County State Court. And she moderated our panel for Mammal Gallery, and she was gracious enough to agree to do this again for us. And Dr. Jordan Greenbaum, who is the staff physician for the Institute on Healthcare and Human Trafficking with the Stephanie Blank Center for Safe and Healthy Children at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And then Takeda Green, who is a criminal investigator for crimes against children and sexual exploitation for DeKalb County District Attorney's Office. And then Casey McClure, who is the founder of For Sarah. And can I tell them that it's named after your daughter? Which is named after her daughter, who is here supporting her mom. And Sean Smashjet, who is with Wellspring Living, and she'll tell us more about what happens at Wellspring Living. So thank you all. Shondina.
Thank you. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to thank Maxine and Brenda for allowing us to be here today. This is an extremely important topic, and we cannot do this without our community, and so thank all of you for also attending today. I will tell you this about myself. Prior to my appointment as a judge in DeKalb County, I actually worked at Fulton County District Attorney's Office as the Deputy over Crimes Against Women and Children's Unit. And there I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Greenbaum and with Investigator Green there. And I also worked with Wellspring as well as Youth Spark. But I will tell you how I became extremely involved in this particular topic and subject matter is because there was a case where a young woman in Fulton County was the victim of human trafficking. She was, and you all may not remember this, but this was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. And she was placed in a dog cage and made to stay in that dog cage because her abuser and the person who was trafficking her would not let her leave because she wanted to get out. And so from that, we ended up prosecuting the case, and the defendant in that case, David Lee Walker, actually that was our first human trafficking case in Fulton County, and he received a substantial amount of time. And so that is what kind of brought this to light for me. And I just want to ask some of our panelists, and all of you all have been involved with this, but I want to start with Dr. Greenbaum. Because with Dr. Greenbaum and I actually worked on Fulton County child abuse protocol years ago, and Dr. Greenbaum has been very instrumental with assisting our children. So my question to you, Dr. Greenbaum, is how did you become involved in this, and what do you see particularly with our children and their ages? And the various ages.
And hold the microphone up pretty close so we can hear.
Thank you very much. Your first question was, how did I get involved? I work as a child abuse physician at our Child Advocacy Center, and so we work with a lot of kids who have been abused and neglected, and I realized that child sex trafficking is really a form of abuse and maltreatment, and so it should be something that we are involved in at our Child Advocacy Center. So I learned more about it and then started partnering with, initially, it was the Sandy Springs Police Department, to try to come together and start a multidisciplinary effort to provide care for suspected victims of trafficking, and that really sort of spiraled, and eventually we had whole community protocols that address how to react and respond if there is a child who somebody suspects may be a victim of sex trafficking.
And if we would pass it now, and Investigator Green, would you also tell the panel a little bit about your background and how you came involved and some of the steps that they can look at?
Okay, so I, as Shandina originally pointed out, used to work in the Fulton County District Attorney's Office as an investigator. I was assigned to the Crimes Against Women and Children Unit. And at some point while I was there, it was determined that victims of human trafficking had specialized needs, and that, they were victims that really required, different types of prosecution, and those cases had different dynamics involved in them that were really specific to that population. And so out of that, a human trafficking unit was developed there, and I was appointed as the investigator for that unit. So I worked exclusively on human trafficking cases, partnering with the prosecutor, who was also assigned exclusively to those cases, and a victim advocate that just did those types of cases. And I did discover that the dynamics were very different than our typical victim that we would encounter of abuse in that unit. And so overall, I've been an investigator for about 8 years, but I've been specializing in these types of cases for about the last 3 to 4 years. And from Fulton County, I came over to DeKalb County and began working in DeKalb County doing the same types of work with human trafficking victims. And I was also working with the FBI on their task force, Metro Atlanta Child Exploitation Task Force, the GBI and their Internet Crimes Against Children team, and also I was assigned to the Fulton County Human Trafficking Task Force as well.
And is it Casey? So this is my first day meeting Casey, and it is a pleasure, Casey. And will you tell us about For Sarah and how you developed that organization?
I'm the founder of For Sarah. Sarah's named after my daughter, Sarah, who is now 14. I actually came from the industry. I was sexually abused as a child by my father. My sister and I both, my brother, were molested as kids. Started acting out as a teenager, ran away from home, got expelled from school, dropped out of school, went into stripping at the age of 18, danced for 6 years, and got called out of that industry in 2003. After I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, I was already transitioning out, but that kind of pushed me over the edge not to go back. And just through that, I felt a calling to help the girls because all my friends were still dancers. My sister was still dancing, and my grandfather was murdered. He was a buyer of prostitutes. He was married to my grandmother, loved my grandmother very much, but had an addiction to women on the street, and he was murdered in 2004 when he was with one. So through that, I felt like this was my journey in life, and so we started doing strip club outreaches, and God opened up doors for us and gave us favor in the strip clubs, because the house moms that were the house moms when I danced were still the house moms to this day. And so doors have just opened, and we're able to get into these clubs and do outreaches into the clubs. And then we do an online outreach where we reach girls that are selling themselves online. We have came across girls, there was a couple cases actually through DeKalb, where we had helped locate this 14-year-old girl that was selling herself online, and they did a sting and recovered her and a 15-year-old girl. And then we also were able to find other victims, adult victims, and we refer them to the FBI as well. But our main focus is just building a relationship with the girls while they're still in the industry. We don't go and say, okay, you gotta get out of it, you're gonna die. You know, we don't approach it that way. We approach it in relationships and just saying when you're ready to make that transition or when you feel safe enough to leave, we pick up the pieces and try to find a placement. We just opened our first assessment home for pregnant women because as a mother, finding out I was pregnant, that kind of would push me over to make that transition and to leave. And so many girls are now getting pregnant by their pimps, and it's hard for them to make that transition or their trafficker. And so I felt like that's what was a need. And so we opened our first assessment house, and we're taking pregnant women and women that have 1 or 2 children. It's a small house, but God has just been great, and He's making a way for us to continue to do the work on a different scale.
And Sean, would you introduce yourself to the panel and let them know about Wellspring?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us, and thank you for being an amazing judge. I've gotten a chance to see some of your work. I'm, again, Sean Smashjet. I am an advocate. I was just kind of minding my own business it's actually 5 years ago now, sitting in a class in Kennesaw State working on my PhD. And a young girl came in to tell us that human trafficking was happening in our city. And being here for 26 years, I basically said, it's not possible. That's not happening in the city. I've been here 26 years. I rolled strong for Atlanta. Atlanta's not a hub for trafficking. What are you talking about? Furthermore, I have a 25-year-old that I've raised here with me and my husband. And so it was unreal to see what was going on. So literally, my job for the next 5 minutes after that girl started talking to me was to start researching what was really happening in the city. And I began very simply with someone like, for Sarah's organization, Nightlight at the time was a product that taught, they're now out of darkness, but they taught me that what was happening in the strip clubs. And then, furthermore, I started just researching, just trying to dig into this. And then it's one of those things where when you find something out and you know better, you have to do better. And it just was placed on my heart to start collecting hotel items, and I partnered with Street Grace. And then I found out there was a place, because at some point when you started going into the strip clubs, and I wasn't afraid to go into strip clubs because for almost 9 months as a 19-year-old, just being stupid. And so I've been able to identify with the girls that are in there. So that led me to the rescue teams. So for the last 4 years, I've practiced getting on social media, going into strip clubs, etc., being a part of the rescue teams. But most importantly, once we have them in our placement, now what? So that is why I partnered with Wellspring Living, because they have places for the girls to actually call home, spend up to 18 months there, getting healed and recovered. And we have so many programs for them to do. They go to school there, etc. But most importantly, they can start their new journey in that spot. And some girls are placed with us, but we also have a living academy. We have places for women who have children who need assistance or recovery efforts. We just have so many different things for Wellspring Living, but it's been one of those things that they're a power source in the city, and I'm glad to be a part of this. And I thank you guys for having us today.
Thank you. So now I have a question for you, the audience. How many of you have come into contact with someone that you thought may have been a victim of human trafficking? Anybody? Okay, we've got 2 people. Do any of you know someone that has been the victim? 1 person. Okay. So, Sean, my question is for you. Would you tell the audience what are some of the things that they may need to look out for?
Oh, this is a perfect question. And I'll give you something so simple. I'll give you a story, a real quick story. So, I like getting my nails done. That's my thing. They're mine. They actually are mine. They're not press-ons or anything. And a young girl and a man walked into the nail salon. So it's something so simple that you probably wouldn't even think about. Because ladies, let me ask you this. When you get into the nail salon, what's the first thing they ask you to do?
Select the color.
Pick a color. She didn't pick her color. So I was like, where they do that at? Ain't nobody picking my color. And then, so she looked at him to pick her color. Secondly, she goes and she sits down. So this is just a favor of the Lord because she sits next to me in where we're getting our feet done, and I'm sitting there and I'm paying attention like why he picked her color. First of all, when I looked at her, she looked like this baby here. She was young and she was all dialed up, had lashes on, makeup, and her clothing was just slightly inappropriate. But at any rate, she sat next to me, and what is the next thing we do, ladies, when we're in first of all, there's no men in the salon, and he sat in the salon. Unless you're getting your nails done, men aren't typically going to the nail salon for the most part, so that kind of caught my eye. Secondly, what is the next thing we do once we're sitting in the chair? What do we do next? Anybody? I heard something.
Relax, listen to music.
Okay, but what do teens do? What do you do when you're in the nail salon? What's the first thing you do? Get on the phone. Start strolling. She had no phone. So that was the second indicator to me that something's wrong. And then her body language, she put her head down the entire time. So she had no picking up no color. No decision was made by her. Secondly, she had no phone. And then when she sat down, just her whole body language said, please scream, basically, help me. And then she kept kind of looking at him like if the lady asked her something about her feet, she's looking at him for an answer. And I'm like, that's unheard of. So I immediately leaned over in a mama way, and I said, baby, are you all right? And I said, and she wouldn't answer, she wouldn't look at me. And I pretended to look at the view, because how I knew it was an inappropriate time is the view was on. So she looks like she's supposed to be in school, and the view is on, so I pretended to look at the view, and I became the best ventriloquist you've ever met. And I started talking to her and saying, if you're not all right, and I just kept saying, I said, you're gonna be okay, I'm somebody that can help you. And I said, if you would, my heart's beating the whole time, because I know they're getting done with her feet really quick. And I said, could you tap your phone number out for me on your leg if you're not all right? First of all, if you're not all right, put your pinky out. She put her pinky out, and I started thinking really quickly. She tapped her phone number. Now, I probably should get a job with the GPI, but she tapped her phone number to me, and I put it in my phone all while paying attention to to pretend what was going on. And when she tapped her phone number out, I became really squirmish, and I told the lady, I gotta get out of this water, I need to jump, I need to go to the restroom real quick, I'll be right back. So wet feet and all, I took off to the bathroom, called her mother, and her mother is screaming for dear life. And I said, listen, I don't have time for you to be screaming. I said, I need you to get the police here, I need you to know where she is, just in case something, happens, da, da, da. I said, but I'm calling, I said, but she had been missing for 2 years. And the police got there. It would seem like the longest 5 minutes of my life because they're getting done with her really quickly. And I'm trying to signal to the nail tech, slow down, take y'all time, And the police got there really quickly. And luckily, as soon as the police got there, he got up. He immediately stood up and was getting ready to leave her sitting there. And the police said, hey, wait. We're not looking for nobody in particular, looking for you, not looking for you. And he asked her what her name was. And as soon as he said her name, they so fast, I've never seen the police move so fast, but they had him cuffed so quickly. But something that simple as being in a mall and seeing something that don't look right. Seeing a girl who doesn't look like that's her daddy, her real daddy. And just, there's so many small indicators that you guys see stuff all the time, and that my eyes are keen to it now. But something so simple as that, being able to bring a girl like that back to her family after 2 years is just one amazing feeling. And the other thing I will tell you guys real quick is what is taking over right now is the social media and the game, the Fortnite, the PlayStations. They're getting our kids through that system because they're talking to strangers. I had a 9-year-old boy to be rescued from that game because he talked to a stranger, and the stranger showed up at his school. And
no, wait a minute, I want to stop you. For a
Okay.
second.
Okay.
Because I have a 9-year-old,
Mhm.
and all he talks about is
Fortnite.
Fortnite.
Mhm.
And I don't really know what the game is or
Okay.
what it does. But how is it that they're able to communicate?
Okay, so what happened to this 9-year-old boy, and it broke my heart, I think about him every day. What happened to this 9-year-old boy is they talk to strangers. So when we're on this game, a person can get on the game and say they're underage or 12 or the same age when they're really adults. And they're talking to them and interacting on this game, and you got it, da, 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 da. And so he literally seduced this little boy for 4 months, talking to him on the game, consistently getting his attention. And for that particular 4 months, he would just say little things like, so I go to so-and-so school. What school do you go to? So he primed him. He never just came out. He just talked to him little by little and got little information. What time is your day? Oh, my parents are coming home. What time do your parents come home? So he prodded him with the right things to ask. And then he showed up at school one day at the prime time when they were playing outside. He's like, hey, little Jimmy, so it's your friend on the game. Your mama said you could come with me. There's a match. You can come home. She sent me to your school to get you. Now, the school failed us because the young boy did end up going with the predator. And he walked away with him. No harm, no foul. Just went on with him. And for 4 months, he was made to sleep with young men for 4 months. And so I would have been really, I work on not only the Fulton County Task Force, but I've been working in DC on the National Coalition of Sexual Exploitation, trying to get bills passed for this PlayStation and Xbox that will put more regulations in place to help our kids. That they shouldn't be able to partner with anyone unless a parent says that person can, but it's also kind of parenting. As a parent, if you don't know the person they should be playing with, they should not have any access to that game. But we're trying to put in some force, making the games be a little more responsible as well. But they're not the only ones. That's how they're targeting the boys.
Mr. Green, would you tell the audience what are some practical things that they can do to be aware and that they can do to help combat and prevent this issue?
So one of the primary ways that we find, as Sean has already touched on a little bit, that children are getting kind of manipulated into the human traffickers, web and, getting sucked into this lifestyle is that they're being confronted and, groomed through social media and those types of websites that we're talking about. So the majority of the cases that we encounter, there's some contact made online through Instagram, through Facebook, through dating apps that your children should not be on, but some of them are on, and different, especially teenagers as they get a little older. But they're being targeted through those social media platforms, and typically it's not a trafficker coming straight at them and saying, hey, I want to do this to you. There's usually a grooming process that takes place where they establish some type of rapport with them. They, kind of figure out what that child is into, what the child likes, what, will pique their interest. And then they play on that and they use that to, gain their trust. And then once they gain their trust, then they can kind of, get them to do things that they want them to do, such as leave their home or meet them places or sneak and talk to them after hours when their parents aren't, aware that they're on their phone or tablet or communicating with a stranger. So, to Shanina's question, what can you do to kind of, help combat that? One of the things that I recommend is if you have a young child that you're considering giving a cell phone to, because now, the age at which kids have cell phones is way younger. It's getting younger and younger as the years go on, so they're getting tablets and, cell phones in elementary school now. So if you're going to do that, different providers have parental controls that you can, set and establish on those phones, and I would suggest you use those. I would also suggest that you, talk to your children about internet safety, and maybe, they have what they call like a family contract where you establish, an understanding with them that they will turn over their passcode to you so that they don't have a private cell phone that you don't have any access to see anything that's going on their cell phone. The other thing is, if you decide and opt to allow them to have social media accounts, that you also get the passwords to those social media accounts so that you can monitor, what is going on those social media accounts, who's contacting them. One of the things that we advise strongly against is they should not be communicating with people that they do not know. So, strangers and, a lot of predators will, they say, hit people up in a DM, they will send them messages, to ask them, hey, accept me as a friend, or let me follow you, or, they will send suggestive, images and things like that. So, just educating them on the dangers of social media, telling them not to communicate with people they do not know, telling them to be open with you if something makes them feel uncomfortable online, or if they just, feel confused about something that's going on, making them aware that they should let you know immediately. Those types of things are things that would really, really go a long way towards, making sure that your child is safe from those internet dangers, which is the primary way we see children get, looped into this process.
Can I add to that? Also, parents, just like we were pretty slick at that age, they are even slicker. So even though you might have the password, they have things on their phone that they've attached that are very simple apps that hide the things that you don't want them to see. So in case you told them they couldn't have Snapchat and they don't have Instagram, they have apps on there that look like a calculator, a Bible, or all types of things that when you look, you think it looks, you're like, oh, little Jimmy's phone looks like this. But then you're like, oh, he's not getting into anything. But if you open up some of those apps, press open, make sure that is the app that what it is. If it looks like the Bible, open it up. It should open up a scripture. If it doesn't, it is because it's hidden apps. So to keep you from knowing that they're on Monkey, and they're on House Party, and they're on other apps that they shouldn't be on, where the predator literally is sitting there waiting for them. And also, be careful what they tag. When they tag themselves something so simple as, I hate mom, I hate my mom. Most of the girls that we've come in contact with, it was something so simple. I'm like, how did the predator get to you? Oh, I just happened to type, I hate my mom, and he hit me in the DM and said, why do you hate your mom? Or why do you hate your dad? So they followed them based on the hashtags. There are people who are sitting there waiting to do that. And then if I can also share these cheerleading groups, these gymnastics, these dance troupes, they're a huge opening for the predator. Every time we have something down at that Georgia Congress Center, I'm down there asking them, pleading with them, please put something in place that's just not leaving our girls open. They go on Reddit. Every time they come here, I can go down Reddit, and Predator is literally watching Reddit to say, hey, plenty of fresh meat down at the Georgia Congress Center. You know why? Because my daughter was a cheerleader. She was in gymnastics, dance, all that. And I would just drop her off, because that's a few hours for me to go get my nails done. But guess what? The predator is waiting because all of these girls are in one space, and it's easy for him to lure your daughter, who just happens to be walking by trying to go get some food, away. So just talk to them and tell them how important it is for them to stay together, stay in groups, and not to be manipulated away with the shiny objects, such as let me get you a bag or buy you something, etc. I wanted to add to that, that you're checking on your phone, but they're slicker than we are, because they're learning how to use these things at 2 and 3 years old, all the way up, so, and things are just gonna get harder.
And so, audience question, how many of you believe that this could happen to someone in your family or someone that you know?
That's a good question.
Okay, so Cassie, if you would answer this question for us, would you tell us how is it that you became involved in that, and what are some of the things that this audience should look at in terms of with their family members? Does it matter what your age, what age or color, does that make any difference at all?
Well, a lot of people want to put us, girls that came from the industry in one category, that we're all troublemakers, we all came from messed up family, which a lot of us did. However, we are coming across more and more girls that grew up in the church, had a good family, and all they did was meet one guy, either online. I'll share a story. We were talking about the social media. There was a young girl, she was 17. She graduated high school at 17. So she got through high school, but she ended up getting on Instagram, and there was this pimp on there that was basically, the Instagram is a problem that we're seeing more and more girls, like the girls that we reach out to, they're on there. They're not having to do it on Backpage, because Backpage is shut down, but there's other sites where girls are selling themselves, but they're using Instagram as a tool to lure men, because they can do videos and stuff. Well, this young girl, 17, got on Instagram and saw this pimp, well-known pimp in Georgia, which just got 25 years, and he's about to get probably 25 more for her case, and she saw, because he was advertising all the money, and all the girls were handing him the money, their money. And so the pimps are smart, but they're also very dumb. And so they put all this on social media, and this girl saw it and reached out to him and said, hey, I want to be on your group, because you've got beautiful girls, and they're making money. And he says, well, you can't come with me yet, because she's 17. He says, but contact this guy. Ends up, he is a registered sex offender. He gets her, sends his mama to her mother's house, picks her up, lures her away, and luckily her mom, she was 17, they had been kind of fighting a little bit, so she just saw a bully come pick her up. So she was thinking, who is this woman? So she got her tag, got everything, and she let her go, but she ended up finding her missing, as a runaway. That tag linked her back to her pimp. Long story short, the girl was recovered. She was recovered with a registered sex offender, and she had met him because of the other pimp through Instagram. And she had a good family. All her brothers and sisters went to college, becoming nurses. They were doing good things in the community, and here she was making a choice because she met someone on Instagram, and she wanted to go make fast money. And that's kind of how it lures you in here. When we're on outreach, we have girls that hide from us sometimes because they're like, which church do you go to? Because sometimes they are in there working, but they go to church still. Their family grew up in church, or their parents are pastors, and they go into that lifestyle. So it can be anybody and everybody. It can be men or women. It can be, there's a lot of transsexuals that are in this industry that are being exploited online. There's no respect for persons. It can really be, we've had calls to women that were 64 years old selling themselves online. So it's just, I guess when desperate times sometimes calls for desperate measures, but it's just unbelievable the amount of women that are involved in this lifestyle. It's the oldest profession, but because of social media and how easy it is to just start basically soliciting, it's easy for your 12-year-old daughter or granddaughter to get online, and next thing you know, she's lured off just like the 17-year-old with the family that is doing this for a business.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Can I add to that? You are 100% true. Now, Casey did say, that a lot of times they think people are runaways, but I had a case here this year where I do these speeches all the time, so not necessarily in a panel, but I go out to the colleges and I get invited to high schools and middle schools all all the time. And every time I go, girls will come to me later and say, Sean, I think my friend, or I've got something to tell you, or you can see the girl who's in the room who this is happening to. And so this particular girl out in, I believe I was in Caucus or Caucus, whichever one, I go to the high school and I have this conversation, and she comes up to me after the discussion and she says, Ms. Sean, I think I'm being trafficked. And I said, what? And she said, well, I met this boy who appeared, he was on my Instagram, but then all of a sudden he started going to my school. And I thought, this is great. I've seen him on Instagram, but now he's a part of my school. So he literally put himself in the school, had another girl to pretend and say, oh, I'm gonna be your boyfriend. And he became her boyfriend. For the first 2 months, it was just her and him. But on the third month, he said, baby, you know what? Now, mind you, she's 16, still going to school every day, still going to school and what have you. He said, baby, this is so good that do you mind sharing it with my homeboy? Now, there's not a man in here in this room that would share his wife or anybody else with another woman if he really loved them. But he asked her to share herself with his homeboy. And then she said after that, then she began with another homeboy and another one. So for the last 4 months, she had been sleeping with 4 boys, and her boyfriend, her bae, was charging them $20 a piece after school, and they had to be done. And he said, you just do it for me, you know, when you get out of school, you're 16, we're gonna build this money up, and it's just gonna be me and you, baby. So he pretended to be her boyfriend, and she was still going to school when I got there. So imagine your child is 16, coming home every day, you don't know anything's wrong because they were out of their parent, and she was at her parents' house, having sex with 4 boys a day, at least, until 6:30, until the parent came home from school, and having to deal with that trauma. So what you guys think it looks like, it doesn't look like the person who's in the back of the trailer being brought over from the border somewhere. It's right here in the city. And she just opened up and said, this is what's happening. And of course I went to the counselor and they busted that whole little thing that was happening there. But just something that's so similar, so much as you guys getting the information out and talking to your kids about what it looks like.
And just generally, there are 2 categories that we typically see people fall into as when it comes to children being trafficked. Generally, there's going to be what we call your finesse pimp, and that's going to be the person who meets your child and they approach them for a romantic relationship, and they gain their trust through a romantic relationship, and then they begin to ask the child for favors. And as she described, will you do this for me? Or I've fallen on hard times. I just need you to help me out and do this one little thing for me this one time. And then one time becomes 2 times. And 2 times becomes 3 and more. And it continues. And so that's one general way we see it happening a lot with children. The other way is, your worst nightmare where, your child is just beaten or snatched or, some kind of way tricked into being in the possession of someone who immediately begins harming them, does not try to manipulate them into it, just forces them into it through physical coercion and, through threats of harming their family or harming them. So generally, those are the 2, dynamics that we see happening with children. Either someone gaining their trust, through a romantic relationship or through some type of mentor relationship, something along those lines. Or, them being physically forced to do the trade.
Recently, there was 4 juveniles that were recovered, and they were recovered on 2 different cases. One, the guy called 911 because he was not going to pay the girls, and so the girl said, well, that's okay, I'll get my people to come back and hurt you, and he called 911 himself, which was really stupid, but the girls got recovered, but they were in gangs. So part of the gang initiation is to sleep with a certain amount of people too. And so sometimes if you notice like tattoos on their hands.
Right there.
Yes, there were some rose tattoos on a couple of the girls that were recovered recently. And we had just did a training on it. The very next day, one of the ladies that we trained was at a pizza restaurant during the Super Bowl. She's like hyperventilating, like, oh my God. It was a young girl sitting, she was like, it's her pimp, it has to be a pimp. There was another woman with them, and he had triple X on his neck. She had the rose tattoo on her hand, and she had an ankle bracelet on. And she looked like she was probably 16 years old. But it's like just paying attention to things like that, because sometimes there are signs that you can't pick up on really fast, and there's some signs that you just don't pick up on. But sometimes the police are not, how can I put this? They're trained, but there's some police that aren't as trained as well as the other police officers that will arrest the juvenile and put her up. Because there was another situation of another officer, of a minor that had met a guy on Plenty of Fish, and she was on a date, and the officer intervened and met the girl that was 15 and the guy that was 28 and married, and they let the guy go and arrested the girl because she gave him a fake date of birth. So there's things that we still have to learn as a community to realize that there should be an intervention there, like what is going on? You're 15 years old meeting a guy off of Plenty of Fish and coming to a parking lot with a married man. That man should have been asked more questions or arrested and held accountable. So there are still a lot of more things, like we keep talking, and it's the same stuff to everybody. But a lot of people are just not getting it still because they're looking at it as, well, I think she chose to run away from home and she chose to sleep with this guy. So that might have been her choice for that moment, but if he keeps driving her and transporting her from place to place to have sex with men, he should be held accountable and charged with pending and trafficking. And so there's just so much still that we have to change and work on as a community.
So, Dr. Greenbaum, would you tell our audience what are the ages of children that you have come into contact with? What are some of the things that you have observed? And what are some of the things, how does this impact our community in terms of with the health of the children as well as with the community?
I think it is a major, you're right, it's a major physical health and mental health problem. We've noticed a lot of children in Atlanta, we see at Children's Healthcare in Atlanta, they tend to be 14, 15, 16 years of age. And when we see them, they're identified as trafficked persons. Almost 50% of them have an active sexually transmitted infection like gonorrhea or trichomonas, and a third of them have a prior history of that. So think about this 14-year-old girl who is coming in with pelvic inflammatory disease that could render her infertile if she doesn't get it treated, and she's got a history of gonorrhea in the past. That's what we're seeing. It's a big health issue. In many cases, the sexually transmitted infections don't have any symptoms, so the kids don't know they have them. And it can go on to lead to a lot of pregnancy problems and fertility issues. We also see a lot of children who are using drugs, and I firmly believe that it's not that they're becoming addicted and that's what makes them vulnerable. That certainly happens. But I think most of the kids are using drugs like kids use drugs, and then when they are pulled into this life, they start using drugs more and more just to get by, just to get through the night. You know, think about it. If you were going to have sex with 5 people you didn't know, would you want to do that straight? I wouldn't. I would get as high as I could, as fast as I could, and I'd stay that way. So I think we have a lot of drug problems, substance use problems, a lot of pregnancy issues. A third of our girls gave a history of being pregnant. These are 14, 15, 16-year-olds. What's even more startling and more scary to me is that not only in our group of kids, but in other studies, they find very, very high rates of post-traumatic stress disorder and very high rates of major depression. In one collection of children, again, youth, 14 to 18 or so, 47% of them had attempted suicide within the past year. Can you imagine? 47% had attempted suicide, not just thought about it, had attempted it. So we know that there's incredible emotional adversity that happens to these kids. A lot of them live through a lot of trauma before they ever get trafficked. That's what makes them vulnerable. But then when they are pulled into the trafficking situation, they have this ongoing chronic trafficking trauma that essentially they're getting raped 5, 6, 7, 8, 12 times a week or more. And so it's extremely hard to treat them. And we don't have a good established system for how to treat children who have been chronically traumatized like that. And that's what people are struggling to do, is figure out what kind of mental health treatment is going to work best for these people. And it's not necessarily one strategy. There's got to be a number of strategies. And I think, I'm rambling here, is that?
Oh, no.
I'll just shut in 1 second, but I think as far as mental health treatment, it has to be a very diverse approach, that there has to be a number of different ways of going at it, because some people are going to respond really well to yoga and meditation, that's going to do it. And others going to be intensive cognitive behavioral therapy for years or months. And in many cases, I think it's going to be a series of different things. But we have to put a lot of resources toward identifying ways to treat the emotional aftermath of this chronic trauma.
And I wanted to ask you another question, Dr. Greenbaum. So you have been an advocate for for a number of years. So would you tell the audience, what are some of the things that the health community, what are some of the things that you all are doing to bring awareness? And are there any things that you can suggest to this audience that would also help?
Thanks for asking that. We know there have been several very good studies done that show that many children and adults who are trafficked do seek medical attention while they're being trafficked. In one study, almost 90% of adolescent girls and women who had been sex trafficked said, yep, I went to see a healthcare provider while I was being exploited. Nobody asked any questions, they didn't say anything, they came in, they got treated, they left. And that's abysmal. But it does tell us that we have an opportunity as healthcare providers to identify people who are at risk and offer services. We certainly can't force services, but we can offer it. And there's really good information that says that many children who are being trafficked have a lot of mental health issues and see counselors as well. So mental health providers need to be able to identify potential trafficked persons. So what we decided to do through a very generous grant from Junior League of Atlanta a couple of years ago was to set up what we call an Institute on Healthcare and Human Trafficking, which targets healthcare professionals, adult and child healthcare providers, to give them information about sex and labor trafficking, and not just with children, with adults, foreign national trafficking victims, as well as domestic trafficked persons, answer questions, provide training, help them establish protocols so that if somebody sees something in the emergency department at DeKalb Medical, they know what they should do. It's not trying to grasp at straws and figure out who they should call. They know, they've written down exactly who they should call, what they should do, what services they can offer, so that these guys get called and notified and people get referrals. We developed a screening tool with 6 questions that can be used in a very rapid turnover healthcare setting. And these are the 6 questions. Do you use drugs and alcohol abuse in the last 12 months? Have you ever had any run-ins with the police, any law enforcement? Have you ever run away from home? Sometimes kids feel like they just can't live at home, they gotta leave, and so have you ever run away from home? Have you ever had sex, and if you've had sex, how many sex partners have you had? I can't remember the last one, I'm blanking on it, but these are very basic questions. And if a child answers yes to 2 or more of them, and for the sex partners, yes would be anything more than 5 partners, would be considered a yes. So if the child answers yes to 2 or more, they're deemed to be high risk. And then you need, not necessarily being trafficked, but they're high risk. So then the person would need to sit down with them and talk, follow up with those positive questions, ask more about things, follow up and find out whether indeed they are high risk or being trafficked. And we found that that's been very helpful for identifying children. With adults, there are very few tools that are readily used in a very busy healthcare setting. The government has posted about 10 questions that you can ask adults. Now at Brady, we're just starting research screening adults there, and are hoping that we can validate a screening tool, because you're absolutely right, you need to do it. But it's not easy to do. No. Because when they ask you, have you ever fallen, you're standing with your wife or whoever you are, with 30 other people in the waiting room. But we can't say that to the woman or the man who's with somebody else. You can't say, have you ever been trafficked? That's not going to help. So we have to figure out a way to get them separated from the person that they're with, make them feel at home, make them feel like they can trust you, and then answer the questions. And that's difficult.
I'm going to open it up for the audience to ask questions.